Welcome to Great Lean Leaders Making the Business Case. I'm Dr. Shannon Flummerfelt, and I'm thrilled to have here with us today Christine Thomas Hill. She's works at the Traverse City area public schools. We call it TCAPS. So in this interview, when I say TCAPS, that's what I mean. So Christine, I'd like to welcome you to the video, and also just like to start with you sharing with us about what is your current position and title, and why did you become interested in the career that you're in?
Thank you. Sometimes I struggle with that question. What made you interested in the career you are in? Because I didn't really set out to have this career. It just kind of happened, which I'm very grateful for. But it's that progression of positions and having opportunities in front of you that has given me the opportunity to be in this position. So I'm currently the assistant superintendent of finance and operations for, I would say, a large district. We're 300 square miles and 9,000 students. I've been in this position since 2015, but I've been with the district since 2005.
Yeah, you've been around a long time, and you are actually, I think, the historian in the organization, right?
Yeah, it makes me feel old when they say that, but yeah, I've got a lot of history and knowledge of the district and what's happened before and how it's operated.
Very good, very good. So you just have a great view on all of this, because it all is a journey, right, for you and also for the district. So going back to either when you started at TCAPS or even before then, can you tell us a little bit, just a quick biography of yourself in terms of your career accomplishments and experience and so on, experiences and so on, so that we can get a feeling for what's been a driver for you and what makes you tick as a lean leader?
Absolutely. So I think like a lot of people tried college right out of high school. It did not go well. I took some classes at a community college, but really didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. I actually thought I was going to be a detective for the FBI, and I started taking criminal justice classes, which I still kind of love and feel like when I watch those TV shows, I know more than them, which is fun. But that was not really going to be my career path. So I took a break from college, got married and had a son, and I had the opportunity to go back to school and not be required to work full time. And so I went back to community college. And, most community colleges recommend a track that's pretty generic so that you have opportunities if you go on to a 4-year university for transfers. And so I did just that. But I really focused on accounting classes. I love math and I love accounting, and I just love how systematic it is and how it makes sense. So I was just about finished with my associate's degree, and I saw the posting at the public schools for an accounts payable position. It's a very entry level position. Um, but I knew a lot about the organization because I have family that worked here at the time. And I knew it was a great organization to get into, to have opportunities for growth, great insurance, great benefits, and back then, a great pension system. So even though the entry level position was hard, at that time I was a single mom. It was really hard to make rent and all the things that I needed to do on that level. But I really only had to stick it out for a year. And I will just tell you, it was really hard to stick it out that first year. I was trained by an individual that had been with the district a very long time. She was retiring, and she had a way of doing things that while training, I noticed very quickly, I just need to do it the way she's telling me. And after she's gone, I can try to figure it out my way. It was so frustrating to me, some of the ways that um, there wasn't really a system and there wasn't practicality in how they did things. So that was a little bit frustrating, but I did it my way after she left and had some opportunity for some extra time because maybe a little bit more efficient, using more technology.
Mhm.
Um, and so I kind of just throughout the business office asked for extra work, wanted to learn new things. I was at the beginning of my career. I wasn't close to retirement. So I was like eager and willing to learn anything anybody would teach me. So I did some stuff for payroll. And then I did some stuff for the accounting coordinator who oversaw grants and food service accounting. And I absolutely loved it. So I think it was probably a year or less that I was in accounts payable, and I moved on to an accounting coordinator position. And it just felt like my niche. Like I absolutely loved working with grants and budgets and working with budget managers. And um, I just really loved it. And on a weird whim, I had a mentor that thought I had a skill set in systems, which was prior to our district's journey in Lean. Thought I had a skill set to really look at systems and organization, but also able to be very social and good with people. And of all places, he sent me out to the transportation department because it really was a mess as it relates to systems and using technology to the best of our ability. And at the time, it was kind of like, go out there and see, what systems they're used, what they're not using, how maybe we might be able to increase productivity and efficiency and give them some more tools to really help the whole entire process. And it was, I kind of felt like at first I was a spy, and most of the people taught me that way. And so they'd come in and tell me all the wrongs and all this stuff. So I got a lot of good information, but I was also making connections with people, which was key, because we had probably 100 drivers, some office staff, and making connections with people, I think before maybe being in charge of a department was a great opportunity for me to kind of get to know them and hear what they like and don't like before being in charge of them or being their supervisor. Long story short, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of opportunity for growth. They had a routing software, but they really were doing the routing the old way and putting it into the software instead of using the software to create efficiencies, which a lot of people I think that aren't used to change do. So you're not really gaining the efficiencies. And this part I'm going to focus on because this was like the whole way in which my career got a start. So I was made the director of transportation. I think I started out there just observing in September, and by May, I was the director of transportation. And we had like a complete overhaul of the whole entire department. We created a policy. We created systems. I learned the whole software of routing. I went to all kinds of other schools downstate that were using it to see it in practice, get advice on how to do things. And we really approached it in a systematic way where our system was talking to our student information system and back. So it wasn't paper and forms and you call this department or that department. And the other big thing is really providing a more professional environment in transportation. We had a lot of casualness in the department, which I thought didn't really give a good look for the district. We had a lot of people in jeans, t-shirts, and tennis shoes that didn't have some professional skills to talk to customers on the phone. And so we just had a major overhaul of that whole system. And I think I was there almost exactly 5 years. And by the time we were done, I think we saved a little over $2 million a year. Inefficiencies, and a lot of that had to do with special ed and some opportunities for outsourcing because there's a better reimbursement through the ISD. But anyway, that really was like my lean journey, I would say, was mostly in transportation before I even knew what lean was. But it was looking at what's the root cause of this problem, things like that, that really sometimes people look at problems they think are problems, but they're not. And they're not asking those deep questions about the root. And so we're not really truly addressing the problem. So that was probably my biggest opportunity to use lean without necessarily the terminology or tools to kind of have a better understanding going forward. And all of my positions have been that way. I think the biggest thing that I learned in transportation was respect for people, and that nobody likes change. So you can't really call it change. And getting their buy-in from the ground up. Like you really just have to honor and respect that, have respect for people, make sure that what you're doing isn't eliminating positions, just making changes and adjustments. But that was such a good opportunity for me. From there, I moved on to executive director of operations and now the assistant superintendent. So some operation experience in transportation, but also some work in facilities led me to this point. And I have such a great benefit of knowing so much about the district from a lower level position, all the way up to just knowing the whole entire organization, the board, and how everything operates, that it just resonates in all the work I do.
So, I mean, if you were to equate your position to the business world, it would be more like a COO, because you are overseeing all the operational and support functions of the system there. But, without the curriculum instruction piece. So, you have
Right.
food service and technology, and of course, maintenance and and then all the business operations and so on. I mean, is that an accurate representation? Would
Yeah, I do think in a private sector, because there wouldn't be curriculum, I kind of equate it more to a CEO, just because I do get they
Mhm.
do lean on me a lot for, historian, right? What did we used to do then? And working with union groups and union contracts and negotiations. And, I oversee licensed childcare now and technology, capital projects. That's a whole new thing
Yeah.
that I learned as it relates to schools and spending money and bond money and running campaigns. So selfishly, I would equate it more to CEO because really I touch everything that isn't related to curriculum instruction.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's fair, for sure. So, well, thanks for that overview. Can we focus now on your district and its lean journey? How long has this been going on? You know, that your district has been trying to engage in lean and use different thinking routines and tools and so on. Like, when did it start? Can you tell us, what that experience was like as an organization to actually start engaging in the lean practice itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was somewhere around 2010, 11. And really how it was brought, we had a new superintendent with experience who believed in it and wanted the staff to understand it. At that time, I think probably, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but at that time, lean in instruction just it was very foreign to people. And so naturally we focused on operations. I think people think of lean and the Toyota way and manufacturing, and it was just easier to equate to operations. So that was my bailiwick. And I remember being in classes with you and just kind of having this aha, like this all makes sense to me. Like it's just common sense to me. But some of the ways in which we would do a task as a group, and then as a group, just kind of go, yeah, that didn't make any sense how we did it. And it's so much more efficient this way. And to be able to do it in a fun way that people weren't so, what's an A3? What's an Ishikawa? That's a weird word. Like,
Yeah.
I do think for the most part, if I can use lean and not use the terminology, it goes a long way, especially in the public school district. But operations people were pretty open to it. Understanding first and foremost respect for people, and we're not trying to get rid of jobs. We're just trying to make opportunities for you to be as efficient as possible so that if there's other work you can take on, or if you have more thoughts and ideas, and just getting the buy-in from the ground up, I think was totally key. And we did it in a slow enough pace that it wasn't being shoved down our throat, if you will. And it was kind of an optional training if you wanted to get involved. And like I said, that just totally resonated with me. And that was probably the tail end of being the director of transportation. And like I said, I'm in these classes just thinking to myself, well, this is what we just did. And so I feel like for me, I just naturally do things like that because that's how my brain works. But to be able to have the terminology and actual physical tools was very helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. We talk about how lean is actually intuitive. I mean, if you have any kind of success in your life at all, in any front, you're probably using lean tools or lean thinking, and you don't even realize it. It's a thing, and we
Yeah.
have to call it lean.
I
So
I
yeah,
don't
so
mean to be, like, off the subject, but I drive my husband nuts when I talk about waste and efficiency, like, for home projects. I'm
yeah.
like, "Why don't you cut all the boards and then bring them in instead of walking back and forth every time you cut a board?" I'm like, "That's very lean," and he just rolls his eyes like, "Really?"
Oh, that is real funny. I know my husband and I, we have a joke if there's, some kind of a dilemma or whatever, he'll say to me, let's A3 this. And, he doesn't really, he kind of gets lean, but,
Yeah.
he's saying that to me. So I know I take some flack myself. Well, thanks for that, Christine. I'd like to focus next on your growth pathway. You gave us a great overview of how you started, as a clerk and have worked your way through to the highest levels of the organization. And as you think about that journey and what that means, and really you have blossomed as a great lean leader. And I think it is important, the point that you made also is that you don't throw the lingo around. You show people how to do these things. It's a showing by doing, which is a Toyota way of getting people qualified and learning in the workplace and so on. So you've done that. But can you go back and think about, besides that one time when you were in the classes and you say, oh, this perfectly makes sense. Were there any other key events or issues or opportunities that, really it was great to have Lean to help you to be able to make those changes and so on? I mean, obviously your success story from transportation is amazing. If my math is right, you save the district $10 million. That's a lot of money in an educational system. But can you talk about, is there anything else after that point as you went through your journey and developing as a leader in the district, as well as becoming a Lean leader? Any other events or opportunities that you can
Yeah,
think?
so I have some like specific events that just kind of resonate with me, but I'll tell you, like, overall, it feels like by having the tools and common terminology, it gives you permission to be annoying, right? So when you talk about the 5 whys, it's kind of like you're acting like a 2-year-old. Why? But when you equate it to Lean, it's like, no, we're doing this process and this Lean principle. I'm not just being annoying, asking you 10,000 questions. And there's a reason behind it, getting to root cause. There's a reason behind the dialogue and the question, and it seems like a safer way to do things with people, instead of just, sometimes people feel like their authority is being questioned, or somebody's butting their nose into a business they don't belong. And so it feels like the safe way to be able to ask the questions to really help people identify things. And sometimes they don't know you're doing it, so even better. I think so. It must have been that we really started in 2000, I think it was 11. So I had been the director for 1 year, and we already had made some pretty good progress. But to be able to sit down with, I mean, almost completely new office staff, we had some retirements, we had some folks that just really couldn't get on board with some technology advances, and we supported them along the way. We tried to teach them and give them opportunities. They just voluntarily decided it wasn't for them. I think that process got me to a place that when it was brought to the district, it made sense, and it gave me the ladder, if you will, to take it a step further. So when we hired new staff, we hired a couple of managers directly under me that also supervised drivers, worked with the system. When hiring them, to be able to have this conversation with them and set the stage that this is an expectation moving forward was a gift, because it wasn't then something, again, shoved down their throat after they were hired. It was just the way we do things. And I will never forget, this is going to be laughable how small of an example it is, but I'll never forget sitting in a room and having a conversation with the AA and the managers about why we were missing the fact that drivers weren't coming in to complete trips. We literally had, I felt like, such poor customer service. We waited for the school to call to say the driver never showed up. I'm like, how is this happening? And we're working through, all in good faith, working through the progress. And we kind of got to this, we were stuck. Like, well, the problem is the driver's not coming in. So we need to tell the driver more and do this and this. And finally, after the 5 whys and really getting to root cause and pushing ourselves to think differently, the problem wasn't that we didn't tell the driver or remind them. The problem was we didn't know they weren't showing up to get the key to take the bus in time to correct it before the customer even saw there was a problem.
Yeah.
So that was our problem. We didn't put any kind of practice in place that we were checking. There's supposed to be a driver checking in 11 o'clock to pre-trip and be at the school at 11:30. So at 11 o'clock, who's checking to see if that driver showed up? And if they're not here, who's calling to say, are you 5 minutes away? Do we need to cover this? And that was just this like really good opportunity for all the managers to see, this isn't really brain surgery here. It's just having the deep conversations about, we were looking unprofessional because we weren't finding out until the school told us they weren't there. So we didn't even know what our drivers are doing, and placing blame on the driver doesn't make us look better. We can remind them 6 more times. If they still don't show up, that's not effective. We tried that. And that for me was like, I'm telling you, like a light bulb went off, and it's like, that's the problem, wasn't the driver at all. It was, we're supposed to, as a department, provide this bus for students, and we weren't doing it. So how better can we hold ourselves accountable to make sure that's being done? And we did little things like that with our key system, like never knowing which bus a driver took as a sub bus if their bus was being worked on. It's like, this is insane. We're giving them the keys. How do we not know which bus they took? And just little things like that just really helped make very small adjustments that made all of the systems and customer service go so much easier. Um, that was really, really eye-opening. And then with garage operations, we had mechanics and a director overseeing all of that is so well fit with lean and
Yeah.
just talking about a better way to do things without waste. That really was like my biggest eye-opening. And then I think now what's fun is to be able to have conversations with curriculum instruction in areas that you don't oversee and have those conversations and make suggestions. Um, Unfortunately, our district didn't really stick with lean, so we have a lot of new people that don't even know what it is. So to be able to sit down with them when they're struggling with something, to be able to provide tools and have conversation with them to help them work out their struggle is so rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, this is also the point of the book is making the case for, why would we stick with lean, or why would we continue to invest in developing people in lean, right? And developing lean leaders. Why would we do that? Making the business case. And so I think it's cool that, that like you find not only, monetary savings, but you find satisfaction, others do from that journey, and all of that put together, it's really hard to ignore. And I think as a lean leader, as you continue to carry that, like it's my job to help people. If I see a problem and I have some tools, I'm not over here in a silo. This is the whole system. We're all looking at it all the time. And so that's really great. It's good to hear that practice. That's very helpful, Christine.
Yeah, and it was a struggle at first to get buy-in for curriculum instruction, and we're not talking about lean in teaching and learning in the classroom. It's not That's really not what we're talking about when we're talking about curriculum instruction. But behind the scenes, there's operations, right? There's
Hmm.
how do we buy the curriculum? How do we get professional development to teachers? How do we get products to and from each school? We had a system where we had certain like science kits and such that every school used this, so they had to use these certain kits that we had in one particular place, and we're shipping them all back and forth, and they couldn't do their lessons all at the same time because they had to wait for this kit. And just having conversations that we're not talking about the delivery of the instruction, we're talking about how to best meet the needs of the teachers so they have the tools they need, and that's all operational. So I
Hmm.
think that really helped get curriculum instruction people engaged and willing and open to have that conversation because that's an operational function.
Yeah, no, it's the key operational function. It's the key technology for the district is delivering instruction. So no, I think that's really good. And I will say there are districts that actually do see the deployment of lean in the classroom, and that teachers use this as a way to approach curriculum in terms of any problem solving in the classroom with classroom management, content delivery, all of that. So yeah, I mean it's generic, right? Lean is
Yeah.
generic. So, but I agree with you. You have to create a little bit of a safe space for people to begin to move into it. So, you were mentioning how you're not hesitant to step in and mentor people and help them to understand through lean thinking and lean tools in a very soft way. But I wanted to ask you about the idea of mentoring and being mentored as a lean leader. Is that something you engage in? Is it important to you? And are there points in time? I know you've mentioned when people saw something in you and you got promoted, but are there any other examples, not by naming names, but just by example of, this person made a difference in my success going forward?
Yeah, I think for me it was two people. So, the first person that ever saw anything in me was the CFO, and he saw some skills as it relates to systems and working with people, and basically sat down with me and two other people in the office and said somebody's got to go out to transportation. Everybody's staring at me like, you've got the skill set to go, and he had faith in me.
Hmm.
And I would say throughout the process, when things came up, he totally supported me, but he also didn't support with a blanket approval, right? It was questioning, it was having the conversation, it was reminding me to have respect for people. But he was my mentor through almost everything I've done. I know he worked with you a lot with lean, and I would say you're my other mentor to be able to just call and have a conversation, a safe conversation about this is what's going on. I'm stuck here. What do you recommend? And sometimes it's just helping you unstick me, but other times I really rely on your professional opinion, mostly because you know a lot about the district. You're kind of a historian too. I think you started here in 2010 working with us,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of new upper level management that haven't even been here that long and don't know what you know. So, really, two mentors in my life that gave me such good opportunities for growth. And just to be able to take that and see their successes too, and use some of those methodologies has been very rewarding.
So was there like a particular time, Christine, in your lean leadership journey, where like when you look back at it and you've mentioned these experiences you've had where you've had those aha moments and the light bulbs went off, um, but would you describe your journey as, sort of gradual and you started to get it? Or was there just like a point in time when it all fell into place and you just went for it? Everybody grows in a different way. And
Yeah.
so I just wonder how your growth pathway unfolded for you in your lean leadership journey.
I like selfishly, I think it's just been natural for me. For
Mhm.
some reason, that's the way my brain works, always have. Um, Even other positions I've been in, like hotel management, like having a lean process for housekeeping, like some of the way it just like I look at things and I see waste and it's just disturbing to me, knowing a lot of times that there's labor shortages and we don't have enough people and people are working harder than they need to. We've never really been in a position that in any of my positions here or other places that you're getting rid of people. That's never the focus. It's just how do you make their life a little bit easier? How do you maybe give them an opportunity to enjoy what they're doing? Because it is a little bit easier. And that's just always resonated with me. I think, as far as I don't know that there was like an aha other than being able to have something the district supported to really push it on others and to have a conversation. So, as a supervisor, to be able to expect that of the people that work for you was a lot easier than just trying to explain, well, this is the way I think and this is the way I like to do things. It was something that was valid and proven. So that the aha was giving me the tools and the language I needed to just inherently bring it into the department. Um, and to have those individuals go through the process and have small successes so they see it works and there is a benefit. So then they have the aha and buy into it.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I would explain it.
That's very interesting. That's really cool. And I think, like you say, your natural propensity for systemic thinking and just like you just can't stand when people are working harder or inefficient
Yeah.
inefficiently when they need to, all of that really adds
Yeah.
to it. And
Work smarter, not harder. I tell that to people
yeah,
all the time.
yeah, for sure. And those become accelerators, right? And let's quit messing around, it
Yeah.
costs us a lot. So
Yeah.
that's very cool. You have mentioned that you used respect for people as the basis for the work that you did out there in transportation and going forward. So I want to look at some of your lean leadership practices here in this next segment. Are there philosophies that are just absolutely foundational for you in your work that you do as a lean leader? What does that look like? And if I were to come in and ask people who you supervise, do they believe in that too? Like, how shared are the philosophies of what you see as a lean leader as being important? What tenets and beliefs and values are you relying on to do this work?
It's funny because I was going to say if you come in and ask anybody that works for me, they can spout it out. Whether they totally believe in it or not, I'm not 100% sure on that, but they know that's what's expected. So work harder, work smarter, not harder is very much something I say a lot. For me, it's the focus on customer service. A lot of times, I think, especially in environments like public schools, we forget sometimes that what we do is done for a reason. It's for the greater good. Like our whole goal here is to educate students. Even
Mhm.
in the business office, our goal is to educate students. So I often have this conversation, especially when we have new staff. People get frustrated. Well, the teacher's not doing this right. And I'm like, you know what? We're not here to tell the teacher she's doing something wrong. We're here to support because they're right in front of the students. But I think having the conversation, explaining it instead of just kind of like sticking it down their throat, I am glad there's errors because that's why you have a job. And I am glad that you are taking this load off the teacher so she or he can focus on what they're doing with students. They're different skill sets. If I were to plunk a purchasing manager or an accounts payable person and tell them to go teach a class, could you do it? Probably not. I'm sure the teacher would tell you what you did wrong. That's not the goal. It's not the goal to say this department, that department. The goal is to be very successful in educating students. So what part in that play do we have? Making people really have that conversation has totally changed, especially our facilities department and transportation as relates to customer service. We're not here for our own paycheck. Some people probably are, but as a whole, we are not. And the expectation is we're doing everything in our power to make it easy for the people delivering instruction and working in buildings with students. That's the goal. You make their job easier so they can actually focus on that. If we're going to bog people down with credit card receipts and tax, when that's not the skill set we need them to have, that doesn't make sense to me. You know,
Mhm.
we have tradespeople that are few and far between, and they're very focused on particular skill sets, right? So if you have an electrician, I don't care if the electrician can't balance his purchasing card. What I care about is that he takes care of electricity in the building. So there's lights, there's heat, and nobody's getting electrocuted, right? Like, why would I pay somebody that kind of money for a specific skill set to worry about tax that has to get refunded? That's why we're here. We're a support function. So I
Mhm.
think everybody knows in operations, we're a support function. That's why we're here. And the other thing I say always is as it relates to expectations, I'm going to forget exactly how I say it because I say it so much, but it's kind of like you want to set the expectations um, under promise, over deliver. And people understand why I say that because it never fails. If you say it's going to be here today and it's here tomorrow, you messed up and it disappoints people. And we try to push ourselves, I think, sometimes to do that. And it doesn't always work out well. For one, our hands are tied, supply chain, other people are involved, shipping. Like there's so many things outside of our control. Why would we promise something we know we can't deliver on? When we can say, you know what, it's probably going to take 3 weeks, but if we can deliver in 2, great, knock it out of the park. Never say it's going to be done in 1 when you know you need 2 weeks. It's just a disappointment as it relates to customer service. So I'm pretty sure everybody that works for me would say that. Um, Under promise, over deliver. That's kind of our motto. And just the focus on why are we here? Why are we here? What is our support function? Those are my true beliefs. Um, and I think anybody that I have a conversation with, we just kind of get to the root of it. Like, okay, so that's a problem. How would you like to handle it? Does it make sense to make the teacher do that? Or is that something that you can just take on and support that teacher? Like we have those conversations and they always get there, right? Half the time I have somebody that walks in, she goes, I know what you're going to say, but I want to run it by you anyway. So, right, they're already thinking the same way. You want to run it by me? You're right. That's exactly what I would say. Good job. And we're good.
Yeah, no, those are great, great. It's a great framework for lean leadership for sure. And like you say, it gives you a chance to open up conversations, and really making sure that you are in that value stream of what your customer wants. And you've got a lot of customers, that you
Yes,
serve
we
in
do.
your ecosystem. So it's a lot to do. But if you stay clear on the philosophy, and the why, and how of what we're trying to do, that helps a lot. So now I want to ask you, you mentioned the 5 whys. You mentioned like waste walks or waste elimination as a big kind of go-to thinking routine that you use. Are there particular methods or tools in the Lean toolkit that are particularly helpful to you that end up being your go-to tool or method? And I mean, there's lots. There's over 50. And there's just a lot to think about there, but those tools are designed to be used in an adaptive, situational way, right? So you can make a very intelligent decision about what makes sense or what combination of tools makes sense. Do you have any kind of a routine around that at all? Is there a go-to method or tool that seems to resonate with you?
Yeah, I think I love A3s. Sometimes they can get bogged down with too much information, but having an understanding, like inevitably when we're working on something and impacts more than one person, more than one department, having a very clear outline of what it is we're doing and what the goal is and who's doing what is very helpful, especially when it's a multifaceted, multi-departmental project is very important. So pretty much anytime somebody comes to me and says they want to look at something or take a look at how this is done, or maybe want to integrate some changes, I always ask for an A3 right off the bat. So everybody knows there's no secrets. It's not about trying to lay somebody off. It's just about process. So that's definitely a go-to. I think I do a lot of Ishikawas, but I never call it that because that it just
Sure.
turns people off for some reason. We
Yeah.
do a lot of current state and future state. You really need to understand where you are to know where you're going
Mhm.
and the hiccups along the way. So, sometimes when you talk about current state, this doesn't make sense. But when you really put it on paper and have a conversation about future state, sometimes you realize that's a current state because legally it's required. So it
Mhm.
still needs to be on the future state. You can't just erase everything you're doing without finding out why you're doing it.
Mhm.
We've had some really silly examples. It kind of cracks me up that people in higher level positions can't just figure this out. But a lot of times it's because they haven't brought everybody to the table that does the work. Why aren't
Mhm.
we asking the people that do the work, is
Mhm.
this necessary? We had a lean project about enrollment, and we had this form that people had to fill out about the child's APGAR score when they were born. And we're all like, well, why are we, what does it matter? Why are we doing this? And well, we've always done it. That's why we're doing it. It's not required. It doesn't, nurses don't need it. Health department doesn't need it. There is no bearing on anything. It's just this extra form we're having parents fill out because we always have. And then we're looking at each other like, this is crazy. What could that possibly matter as it relates to the student's education? And, we went through that whole process and found probably 5 to 6 forms we could just eliminate from parents filling out, and they get bogged down with paperwork.
Mhm.
So it's just funny to me when you get the right people in the room, some of the very easy things you can provide some efficiency to. It's kind of laughable and it seems like a silly example, but we're trying to provide an opportunity for our customers to not feel so bogged down with paperwork. How can we streamline this? Can we ask it all on one form? This department has this question, this department has this question. Well, every time they're filling it out, they're filling out name and address. We already have that. Why do we keep asking them for the name and address for transportation, for food service? We already have it.
Mhm.
So that examples like that I think are key.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And it is just amazing how powerful tradition is and how you do need the lean tools to
Yeah.
be able to examine it and see if is it a value add to carry this into the future state or not? And say, well,
And I
no,
think it
not even a
and I think
value add now.
yeah, and I think clean provides that opportunity for a safe space. Like the 5 whys, if you go into an administrative assistant in a building and ask why they're doing something, they're probably gonna, be probably a little offended, maybe be a little protective of the work, like somehow you're changing it or taking it away. But when you're doing a project and asking it, it's a safe spot. Even
Mhm.
when you have a tool that's called the 5 whys. Why
Mhm.
do we do this? Where does it go from here? What's the current state? It goes from this person to this person. What does this person do with it? Nothing. What does this person do with it? Nothing. And we're all like, can we eliminate this? It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It's just that opportunity for safe um, conversation around process and procedure without people feeling threatened. That whole "you're moving my cheese" conversation.
Yeah.
They don't feel so much like you're taking something away when it's something they're like, I don't know why I fill it out. I fill it out and I send it on to this person. And then you're like, well, yeah, nobody's looking at it, so stop filling it out.
Oh, that's great. It is interesting to me, how truly thoughtful lean is, and it helps you to be more thoughtful and have higher levels of mindfulness. It truly does. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and kind of go to the other end of strategic planning and management. And in lean, we use this term called Hoshin Kanri, which means that not only do you make a plan, but you manage the plan. And I just wondered, organizations have had, some of them had had very negative experiences with strategic planning, largely because they haven't done the management part. Or they just, things are moving so quickly. It's just not really a value added activity for them is the way they see it. But how do you feel about what we call Hoshin Conray, strategic planning and management? Are you using it there in the district? What does it mean or not mean to you, and how's it working?
So we are using in the district, and I was very much um, a proponent of, why are we doing this? It's just a pretty piece of paper. We're not really doing anything with it. We're not proving our successes. And we did it differently this time, and everybody really took more, it's that PDCA. Like, you can plan and do, plan and do, plan and do, but if you never check and adjust, you are getting a student's APGAR score that you're not doing anything with. Like, the check and adjust is so important, and that is what seems to be forgotten all the time. So we incorporated our strategic plan on an A3, which made us check and adjust. And it made us have goals and dates and follow-ups. So I would say that's the biggest difference as it relates to that. Sorry, I'm in an interview online. It's being recorded. Sorry about that. Anyway, I think the PDCA cycle is very important, and it's the easiest one forgotten. So when we took that as part of our strategic planning, that changed my whole philosophy about strategic planning, because it very much was, and I hate to say it in schools, but there's always change in leadership, change in boards of ed. And, somebody that's been here almost 20 years, that's great and I like it, but is it really going to stick? Because if we get a new superintendent or a new board, it might not be their thing. But having that strategic plan and having goals vested in your departments and being held accountable to them are key. And the PDCA is the biggest opportunity to make sure that that happens, and that it happens successfhere, because you can be wholehearted on the plan do, and you can check that box, but it's still not working and it didn't get better and you have no success markers. So what have you missed along the process?
Yeah. And of course, the PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, adjust cycle, the continuous improvement cycle, is represented in the A3. And the reason we do that is because we do want to finally get to a solution that actually does work and that we can keep for however long. It's still value added in our organization. In some cases, it may be short term, it might have a short term shelf life. In other circumstances, it may have a very long term shelf life. But if you think about that part of the work, it's kind of, once you off ramp the PDCA cycle, and now you want to go ahead and make sure things are standardized and sustained. In some organizations, we call it a standard operating procedure, or it's some kind of a process, a sustainable process that we are taking on and maintaining. And then, of course, if you decide to do that, all of that needs oversight and auditing, or it's not going to stick. So you can go through the PDCA cycle, think you've done what's called a 5S or standardization exercise, and you get to that last step of sustainability, and all of a sudden you look around and nobody's nobody's doing it. So how do you approach that part of what we call leader standard work, in terms of making sure those improvements stick? We worked through an exercise recently around facilities and how to use that auditing tool, that leader standard work tool, in the work that was being done, so that we could actually get some standard operating procedures where they were missing. So any thoughts about that and how you use that just overall, if at all, in your work?
Yeah, I think, again, sometimes it's about the language. So not a lot of times do we talk about, we're going to do a lean project or have some lean principles brought in. We don't meet with the custodians to say that. We just talk about continuous improvement, because then that resonates, right? With plan,
Yeah.
do, check, adjust. It's never done. It's not a lean project. Check, we did that, put it on a shelf and we're done with that. We're moving on to something else. It's never done, because you can set up a whole entire system and have the sustainability, and then a year later it's not sustainable, and you have to go back in and figure out Why isn't it working? Do we need to do training? Is it no longer relevant? Sometimes it's no longer relevant. Sometimes you have new staff in positions that have more different ideas. Sometimes the work is just shifted from that job altogether. And so the continuous improvement mindset and just knowing we're never done improving, even as people, you don't ever, especially in educational settings, you don't ever want to be done, stop learning, right? It provides so many opportunities for growth, even personally. So I think having the conversation about continuous improvement and providing people the conversation to say, so we put this in place 6 months ago, a year ago. How's it working out for you? What
Mhm,
kind of obstacles, like a SWOT analysis?
mhm,
What are the strengths? What are the obstacles? What are some of the weaknesses? And inherently, sometimes within that project, you have another project, right? Because that particular sector of the strategic plan or some kind of improvement that we did is not going well now. What changed?
mhm,
Um, sometimes it's the technology we use. Sometimes it's the supplies we get. Sometimes it's just based on the staff you have and their willingness to participate. So it gives you so many more opportunities to decide, is it still relevant? It's kind of like when I started in accounts payable, I'm sure the way they did it was relevant at some point. It's
mhm.
just now with technology and a different way of thinking, it's not relevant anymore. And if
Yeah.
you don't go back and have those conversations, people just keep training the way they've always done it because that's how they know. Um,
Mhm,
so I think it's very important to talk about continuous improvement and make sure people don't feel like, oh, we did that. Good. It's off my plate. Nope. We're going to be back checking. We're going to do some audits. We're going to ask you some questions to see if it's in place. We're going to ask you to tell us, does it work? Is it
mhm,
working? Are you spending more time on it that you didn't think you'd have to? We won't know that unless we talk to the people doing the work. So
mhm.
continuous improvement is a good mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really powerful way to think about how you keep going, and making sure things are actually useful. Uh, we had talked a little bit about, strategic planning and management, and in, some of the process improvement or systemic improvement you go through, you're looking at current state to future state. I wanted to ask you about, how do you set those goals or those target conditions when you do your PDCA and A3? How do you figure out what are the conditions that you want to get to as a target goal, a future state, a benchmark, a goal, a breakthrough objective, OKR, objective and key result, KPI, key performance indicator, whatever the term is. What does that look like? Are you using that methodology at all in terms of figuring out that future state and how to get there, or even some of the transitional steps you might need to do?
Yeah, I would say we're using it. Sometimes those are dictated, right? I mean, sometimes you get goals and objectives and clear identification of success from a board, a superintendent, anybody, supervisor. So sometimes it's tough when they're dictated and you're not part of creating those. I think to identify those, you really just have to start talking about what is the problem or the challenge we're trying to solve. Because again, if you don't really use the tools before you even put it down, if you have key indicators and you haven't really gone through the process to truly identify what it is you're looking at, you might be short-sighting the project, and you might not really be able to check and adjust on something that really wasn't identifying the entire reason why you're looking at this project. So I think for me, it's really talking about kind of why are we here? What is the challenge, problem, difficulty we're trying to solve? And is that truly the root cause? Because in root cause analysis, I think is so key. It's kind of like the bus driver example. Like we could have put 15 more notices in the bus driver's
Mhm,
box and made more phone calls, but it wasn't, we weren't getting the key indicators that we were looking for success. So if
mhm,
we hadn't gone back and really reviewed the check and adjust and that this wasn't working, I don't know how in the end you would have gotten any success. So for me, it's really having the conversation with the people doing the work about how is it working, how is it not working, what would you like to see, and is that possible? And then really just diving in, is that truly the problem? And having those deep conversations about the work.
That's great. Well, thank you. So we're actually at the end of our round one interview, but I'd just like to leave an open-ended question for you on the table. Is there anything else you want to add from all the topics that we went through here today in this round one? I'll just leave the floor to you. Do you have any summarizing comments or anything that you want to highlight or you want to add to the conversation at this point?
I think, um, I think really, like we talked about respect for people, I think gaining trust is huge. You can be driven on looking at data and looking at problems or root cause and trying to have a project associated with it, but not having deeper conversations with people doing the work and gaining their trust so they are not so adverse to having those conversations and they're open and honest. That's key to any kind of success. Because if they shut the door right away, you're not accomplishing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think making sure people know this is a process. It's not personal. We have respect for you and what you do, and that you are doing it to the best of your ability. We appreciate your work. We want you to continue on. We would like to provide more opportunities for you to use technology or other resources to make it easier for you. And we really want to hear from you what works and what doesn't, because we can dictate all day long how you're supposed to do your job. You're the one doing it. You see on a day to day basis what the challenges are. We want to hear from you. So empowering them to actually disclose the challenges they have and feel safe in an environment. This is not going to risk your job. It's not going to risk people at all. It's just about how do we make your job easier for you? Because so many times we can just keep on dumping more and more on an individual. But if we're not taking something off their plate or making it a more efficient, easier process, you're just burning people out. And that's not respect for people. So really right off the bat, having those conversations and make sure it's known that our intentions are good. We respect you. We respect your work. I want to learn more about your work. I'd like you to show me what you do, what you struggle with, but have that safe conversation without making suggestions, because you can't solve things right away without going through the process. And you don't want to fix anything. You truly want to listen. You want to hear from their perspective what they do, what struggles they have, what opportunities they see, and then kind of use the tools and have a more thoughtful conversation about current state and future state with their buy-in.
I think that's wonderful. We've had many, many studies done on toxic leadership in the workplace. And what you've just described is basically the antidote, the countermeasure to that. And it's about having a growth mindset as a leader and to encourage that with all of your people you work with and who work for you and who you work for as well. So thank you,
Right.
Christine, for sharing your thoughts today. This has been a wonderful interview, and I look forward to seeing you for the next round.
Thank you,
Chris-
Shannon.
You're welcome. Christine Thomas Hill, everyone.
Thank you.